Rev up your engines!
We're all waiting with bated breath about Ford and their announcement of a Model T moment. They say that's something to do with electric vehicles. Who knows? Well, now the guessing begins. Some people think that they'll make an affordable EV small electric pickup, which of course is what they should have done in the first place if they wanted to make an electric pickup. Because big pickups have horrible range when they pull heavy vehicles. I knew a guy who had a Ford F-150, a Lightning electric pickup truck. He drove from Rhode Island to Maine. He was pulling a trailer. He had to stop 5 times to recharge it because it kept running out of power so fast. It's big, it's pulling something. Electric motors aren't made for that. They should have really started out with a small pickup. Hey, Volkswagen started out with a small car, the Beetle, right? Made them bigger, and those were gasoline cars. They didn't have a range problem. Even with a small gas tank, those Volkswagens, they got good gas mileage, so they went pretty far. Well, is it going to be a small pickup? It would make sense if they did. The problem is they shouldn't start out with some insane mass production. Don't make like 400,000 of them the first year. What if they're failures? People don't want to buy them and they're stuck with them, like the stupid Cybertrucks that they can't give up. But at least it's a small truck that they're talking about. We got to wait to see what old Farley has to say of the Model T moment. But before, I thought, maybe they're going to tie in with Toyota saying in a couple of years they're going to have a solid-state battery. But now I'm thinking maybe their moment is going to be they're going to tie in with the Chinese, because the Chinese already are taking over Europe with electric car markets, selling a bunch of electric cars in Europe. Maybe Ford will cut some kind of a deal with the Chinese to make these small pickup trucks. Or maybe these small Ford electric pickup trucks, if they make them, maybe they'll be entirely made in China and then just ship them over, like some of the Lincolns are these days. I'm thinking it's got to do maybe with the Chinese. We'll find out in a little while. He says he's going to talk about the Model T moment. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was a Chinese-made small pickup. Well, yes, indeed, Ford is at it again with making many mistakes. Ford is now recalling over 312,000 U.S. vehicles because they're losing their power brake assist. Now, this includes 2025 Ford F-150s, Ford Broncos, Ford Expedition, Ford Ranger, Lincoln Navigator. How would you like that? You got these big, giant, heavy vehicles, and the power brake stopped working. Now, it turns out that the power brake electronic brake booster, the module might malfunction. So here we go again. Computer problems, right? Ford's starting to sound like Tesla. Ford says, we'll update the module software, and you can do it remotely or by a dealer visit, and it's going to be free. Yeah, it better be free, right? But, hey, I've been a mechanic a long time, right? And I see this all the time. We'll fix it with the software update. Then the people get their software update. Then later, they come to me and they said, that software update didn't work. In the case of many times it's transmissions, they don't shift right, they update them and they still shift poorly. And in this case, I just about guarantee you they'll still have problems after their updated software. Again, Ford, they're screwing up the wazoo. Farley's trying to say, well, look, we're going to have a Model T moment. Yeah, maybe he needs a Model T moment. Model Ts are simple. Maybe you should stop all this fancy stuff and go back to a simple design like the Model T and not all this complex electronics that breaks down. Oh, we got to reprogram it. La, 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 la. There is an advantage to having mechanical things over electronic things in that they can be extremely reliable, right? Now, yeah. It's cheaper to make things with electronics because electronics are pretty cheap. That's why they do it most of the time. Cheaper to make them that way. Like a CVT transmission. I don't like them. A lot of people don't like them. They're cheaper to make than regular geared transmissions, so of course they're going to push them out on. Say you bought an American car and then after a year or two it started burning oil and you're mad. Why does this happen? I'll tell you why it happens. Because they build them cheaper. Now, one perfect example is when they build the engine block and the bores that the pistons go up inside. They're supposed to cross-hatch them. The problem is they're always cutting corners in the American manufacturing process. Now, granted, some are made better than others, right? A few of them utilize a two-step honing procedure to cross-hatches. But many of them only use a one-step honing because it's cheaper to do. There's only one step involved, right? That's why. If you find you got a Japanese car, thing's got 200,000 miles, it's still not burning oil. Guess what? They used the two-step process. And that's one of the main reasons. And that's one of the main reasons back in the day. People thought Mercedes engines are great because they had very good quality control. They really honed them well. They're always looking for a cheaper way to build things, the Americans. So if you're using a one-step process instead of a two-step process, of course, we realize it's not going to last as long. It's not going to seal as well. Hence, you get yourself, for example, a Chevy V8 engine. I've seen them burning oil when they had 70,000 miles on them. They shouldn't burn oil that early. And these are people that change their oil when they're supposed to, right? The oil and filter, they don't let anything slide, but they still burn oil. Of course, some of it has to do with the low-tension piston rings. They used to have high-tension that sealed better, but now for pollution reasons and gas mileage reasons, if the piston rings aren't as tight, there's less friction, and then they get better gas mileage, yada, 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 but they also wear out and burn oil faster, too. A lot of this just has to do with trying to cut the manufacturing costs, right? I mean, look, years ago, the Chevy Vega, one of the most notorious oil burners of all time. What did they do? They had an aluminum block, and they thought, we're not going to sleeve it down with stainless steel or cast iron. Sometimes as little as 15,000 miles. Those Vegas started burning oil like no tomorrow. A cheaper process is not always a good thing, even though the bottom line, yeah, look, we're saving money when we're building these things. But if they start burning oil, guess what? You're going to lose money because people will say, I'm not buying another one of those. That was an oil burner. Gee, my neighbor's got a Toyota. My neighbor's got a Honda. They never burn oil. I'm buying one of those next time. Well, the U.S. car market is bankrupting more and more Americans. Why is it? It's a combination of many things. The main thing is the average price of a new car is almost $50,000 now. The interest rates are up, and people borrow money all the time. As of January this year, 6.6% of subprime auto borrowers were at least 60 days past due on their loans. As of the first quarter of 2025, American households carried, are you ready? $1.64 trillion in auto loan debt. That's a lot of money. And you might think, well, what does that really mean? Well, credit card debt is only $1.18 trillion for all the credit cards. So the auto loan debt is even more than the credit card debt. That is a lot, right? And it's even more than the student loan debt, which is $1.63 trillion. So it's awful close to the student loan debt, right? And another reason that this exists is because with coronavirus and stuff, in January 2022, 80% of new car buyers paid more than the MSRP. They overpaid for the cars. They paid too much. The interests are high. They owe too much. Now people are going bankrupt because they can't afford their car payment. So cars are bankrupting people now. It's gotten that bad. Not even to mention how the insurance rates are going up for cars too. Well, here's one I can't help but laugh at. A company called EVgo, makes electric chargers, is borrowing $300 million to build 1,500 DC fast chargers for electric cars, right? Turns out that EVgo has secured a massive loan with 5 commercial banks to accelerate its expansion plans and add 1,500 DC fast chargers to America's EV network, right? All I gotta say is, okay, here's this company, EVgo. If it's a real company, they should have their own money to build these things. If they're gonna make a profit, right? They make it, they build them, they put them out, and they make money. Obviously, that doesn't work. So they're borrowing the money from these banks. So what happens if the whole thing goes, the bank loses its money? All the banks, I should say, because there's a few banks involved, right? They're conning people still with this electric crap. And, of course, here's what one of the EVgo people said. This groundbreaking financing transaction sets a precedent for expanding high-power charging infrastructure by leveraging debt capital. Yeah, they're using debt for it, right? And it's not their money, it's the bank's money. If it goes, the debt goes, the banks lose all that money, right? If people really thought this was going to make money, they would do it themselves. They're playing with your money. Now, some of it is the Bank of Montreal, the Royal Bank of Canada. Hey, you Canadians are being suckered into this stuff now. Don't say Scotty didn't warn you. If it was that good, they'd put their own money into it. Yeah, that's how it always goes. They're playing with other people's money. You got your money in the Bank of Montreal and the Royal Bank of Canada. Maybe you might think about moving it somewhere else if they're making foolish decisions like this. Well, if you think it was bad for Cybertrucks before, now it's even worse. Insurance companies are canceling Tesla Cybertruck coverage because they're saying there's really low production numbers They're not buying them. They're not making them. And they say, quote, due to the limited production, we're unable to adequately rate and underwrite the vehicle. See, the thing about insurance is, if it's shared amongst a large group, then if you get in an accident, they can pay it and the company still makes a profit. But they have to have the figures. So if 10% have a problem, the rates are so high. If it's 20%, the rates will be even higher that the insurance company comes. Now they say, well, they can't rate it because there aren't enough. Well, that's telling you something about them. Listen to this. There's such a small demand for these Cybertrucks now that the annualized rate for 2025, if it keeps going the same way, is below 20,000 units. And you might think, 20,000 units, what does that mean? Well, here's what it means. Elon said he wanted to make 250,000 units a year. Now he's selling less than 20. And they have the capacity already to make 130,000 Cybertrucks a year. But they're selling less than 20. So that means there'd be 90,000 of them unsold. So much for Elon's BS about, I'm going to produce 250,000 annually. Well, he can, but nobody's going to buy the stupid things, right? Now, last year, Geico started the ball rolling by denying coverage for Cybertrucks, and now other companies are joining in. So if you own a Cybertruck, you really made a bad decision. Let's just put it that way. If you don't believe me that Volkswagens make problem cars, many problem cars. Joseph Chirico sends me an email. He says, Scotty, I came down to Disney with my family, mother, 2 sisters, 2 nieces. We rented an SUV. It was a Volkswagen Atlas SE, brand new. We got in the car, it had 7 miles on it. The check engine light came on at 71 miles. What the? Yes! At least you didn't buy the thing, right? And the check engine light's on. What do you care? If it runs and stops, this is my advice. You rent a car. If it runs and stops, the check engine light comes on. Be careful to make sure, if it does come on, make sure the brakes are working good, the engine's not overheating or anything like that. But that's their problem, not yours. They're going to have to take it back to the dealer to get it fixed, right? What quality? Good thing they rented that Atlas and didn't buy it. What, 7 miles and then at 71 miles on the odometer, the check engine light comes on? They're not made to come on that fast, right? It just shows you the lack of quality that Volkswagen has. They are in deep doo-doo. They're talking about shutting down factories, even in Germany, cutting certain brands that they make. They need to get back to making qualities like when they made the Beatles and stop making all this fancy electronic and sharing Porsche technology, since they own Porsche, with the lowly Volkswagen. So now they may be lowly Volkswagens, but they've got Porsche technology that makes them even harder to fix. At least before, they were really easy to fix and they were relatively dependable. Not anymore. I don't have a single customer who bought a Volkswagen in the last 2 decades that bought the second Volkswagen. They all said, one of the worst cars I ever had, I won't buy it. I'll buy something else. And they did. They didn't buy a Volkswagen. Well, this guy, luckily at least, he didn't buy it. He was just renting the stupid thing. Well, if you need any more proof that Americans are insane, well, now you can buy a Kawasaki ATV with a supercharged 250 horsepower engine. They're taking a Ninja Kawasaki street bike engine and putting it into, Kawasaki calls it the Teryx H2. It's got a supercharged 998cc 4-cylinder engine. This is $37,199, and before even delivery fees. Right? It's the first time they put a supercharged engine. Dude, they really need a supercharged engine in an ATV. The other day I was driving our Polaris around, right? It's got a 1-cylinder engine. Hey, the thing goes 56 miles an hour. That's way too fast for an ATV. That kind of power is insane. Now, the interesting thing is, it doesn't have a dual clutch automatic like the fancy ones. It's got a CVT transmission. I think that's kind of stupid for something with that kind of horsepower to put a CVT on. You're losing horsepower. Well, I guess maybe that they had to. It's got so much horsepower, can't use it all. And they also have buttons because they know people are going to kind of fly into trees, go over cliffs. So, a mid-power button that knocks it to 80%. And a low power mode that takes it to 60%. This is the insanity, right? You make something that's got all this horsepower, and then you have buttons to limit the horsepower. Why not just not put the insane horsepower in the first place? Americans want to go as fast as they can, have the biggest, fastest ATV, right? So this thing weighs 2,373 pounds. This is a heavy vehicle, right? And here's the crazy thing. The $37,199 price tag is for the cheap ones. The deluxe four-seater model is $43,199. And if you want a fifth seat, it's $43,699. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be sitting in the fifth seat with 250 some horsepower flying down the road on one of these ATVs. I'll let other people drive it, and I'll watch. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.